God, Rachel, we made it to another episode.
Can you believe it?
No, I can't. People actually like what we're doing here. And today's guest is going to be super fun. Her name is Kaitlyn Rolls. She is Rachel. Tell us a little bit about her.
She is a blogger, a travel influencer, and her blog is She Loves, She Travels. And heck, I love and I travel too, so I can't wait to hear what she has to say. But unusually, she has also worked aboard a cruise ship.
I love that.
So I think we can explore both sides of the cruising and travel paradigm.
And before we get into this episode, what I just want to let everybody know is if you like what you see here, please subscribe and like to our channel. We really appreciate it. It keeps us going. And let's hop aboard this episode. What do you say?
Sounds good.
Let's go. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us to Cruise Ships Explorers today. We have a great guest. We have Rachel. Who do we have?
Kaitlyn Rolls, and I'm super excited to talk to her because she is a blogger, travel blogger, influencer, and she runs
Oh my God, so much.
She Travels. I mean, who doesn't love and then love to travel? But what's really cool about her is that she knows both sides of the travel coin, which is amazing travel tips as a traveler herself, but she's also worked on a cruise ship. She's done, I believe it was a 7-month contract. She's got the story. So let's get right into the stories.
Yeah. So, I mean, the experience that you have is great because for us, you know, we're cruisers, but we know a lot of people that are entertainers on cruise ships. So we hear a lot of stories. We've been getting to interview a lot of people. But, you know, with your upbringing, how did that influence your passion for travel?
So I actually grew up as a missionary's kid. So I was kind of around a lot of locations, and I do think that probably played a lot into my interest of the world quite early because we hopped around quite a bit.
Okay.
And it was kind of a weird pressure because when you're growing up, you're always like told, like, what are you going to be when you grow up? What are you expected to be? What should you do? So I always was frustrated because I couldn't find that. Even when I graduated college, I still had no clue, like, what was my purpose for my life, which now with age, I'm kind of learning that.
Yes.
That's not as relevant. But it was weird because you kind of put that pressure on yourself when you're younger to, like, find out your being. And so I went to school, I did all my steps, I got my degrees, and I was like, I still have no clue what I want to do. I just know I want to travel. So that's
Wow.
great.
Yeah, and it's sometimes societal. You know, it's like you got to go to school, pick a career. Not everybody's like ready. Or what you're truly passionate about, there's no like curriculum for,
Right.
you know?
Or, I mean, I'm very grateful that I did the steps and I have my degree, but I haven't used it. I went straight into traveling right away. I kind of went on the cruise ships originally being like, if I hate it, it's only 7 months of my life. If I love it, then it could be something else. And then I ended up being on board almost 5 years, actually.
And then what was your first like position on a cruise ship?
So I did, on the role of entertainment, it was like I hosted all the games and the parties and
Okay.
so I wasn't like under theater, but I like led the YMCA and I hosted the bingos and I did the trivias. My line called it cruise staff. But I know
gotcha.
that like, Carnival calls it like Fun Squad, and like they'd have different names for the cruise lines. But basically, it's the people that host all the activities and events.
And what was the first line that you went on? Like, what cruise ship was it?
MSC. I always worked for MSC.
Okay.
I love MSC. I wanted to learn languages. So I wanted to work at a line where I'd have to use those languages. And MSC, if you don't know, it's Italian owned, but they're actually the third biggest cruise line in the world. But not
Yes,
a lot of
yes, we do know.
I feel like they're not as prominent in the American market. But I didn't know before I cruised with them. I went on a cruise for my spring break of my college senior year and was like, they look like they have a lot of fun, and then applied.
Right.
Back.
So actually you were a cruiser before a staff person.
Yeah, it was my second cruise.
Okay. So that led you, and it was more of an eye-opener where you said, you know what, this looks pretty fun. I think I can do this.
Yeah.
Because we've talked to a lot of people. It's the same thing. They went on a cruise a couple times, whether they went with their parents, a family, or whatever. And then they were looking around and saying, you know, wait, I could DJ this. I could play in one of these bands. I can direct, you know, or MC. There were so many positions that different people didn't realize that they could actually make money and go on a cruise and do. And it's just like an eye opener, which is something that happened to you. And when you went on your first cruise, as a staff person being different than a cruiser. How did that feel?
I worked with some of the same people that I had talked to as a guest.
Oh, wow.
Hey, because I remember sitting down with some of the entertainers and being like, let's be real.
Yes.
Now you're smiling because you have to smile, but do you really love this job? And so many of them were like, yes. And they were like, there are cons, there are pros, but yes. And so I got really, really lucky when I came back on board. And a couple of the people that have really kind of encouraged me to apply, I was on the same team as, which is wild because, like, what are the chances?
No,
and I
that's
thought they would have
amazing.
never remembered me. And they're like, I remember that day when we sat down and talked, which was really cool.
And you meet so many people from different cultures and stuff like that, you know, you're often wondering, and a lot of the staff on cruise ships change often. So
Yeah.
you're wondering, will they still be there when I come, you know, when you got your job? And they were. That's amazing. Yeah, that's super interesting.
I think one of the reasons that was because they send a lot of, so I befriended quite a bit of South Africans originally. And I think it's like culturally, we have a lot of similarities and the way we talk and speak and stuff like that. They also sent a lot of South Africans, because they speak English as their first language, to the American seasons. And then
Yes.
when I applied, I originally wanted to go to the Mediterranean because I'd never been.
Yeah.
They were like, we'd love to send you, but you can only speak one language. So I was like,
Wow.
that's fair. So I went to Miami. And so I got lucky enough to be on that rotation that a lot of the people I talked to until I could learn more languages.
And how did you study the languages? How did you?
I sat down with guests. Like,
Okay.
part of my job description was like sitting down and socializing with guests, asking them like how their evening is, and lots of like pulling them to like dance and like socialize and be invested in whatever activity we were doing. So I would quite often like sit down with somebody and I would learn how to say like, how do you say? And then I'd like point at like a glass. And then for me, it was easier because the next cruise, they were all different passengers. So I didn't feel as embarrassed to ask next week, how do you say this? Even though I forgot.
Yes. Yeah.
Prior. So it just started very conversationally. It started like, hi, good morning. Welcome to the pool. Welcome to this activity. Numbers for bingo. And then kind of with time, I got to fill in blanks. It took some practice. And also it took me some very embarrassing conversations in the crew bar.
I can imagine. Like, what was the first language that you tackled? You're like, this is the one I want to. Spanish. Yeah.
I've always
Spanish.
wanted to learn Spanish. I studied it in school and learned probably nothing in my 4 years in school.
And do you speak fluently now?
I would say I speak very conversationally. I say like fluent's a really hard, because I ended up I had an injury one season and was in a hospital in Spain. And I was like, oh no, I'm not fluent. But I
Wow.
can get my points across very well in Spanish.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
luckily, Spanish, Italian, and Portuguese are all Latin languages. So I was able to, whenever I couldn't conversate with someone in Portuguese, a lot of times I could speak in Spanish and they would understand.
Well, that's funny because Rachel speaks Portuguese.
Oh, no
And-
way.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's true. Like you can kind of travel all the European countries that use Latin languages, you know, and especially Italian. If they slow down, then you start, you know, you understand the gist of what they're saying. So in
You can
any given
understand no words in Italian and understand by their faces what they mean.
Yeah.
that too. Italy
we
is
know.
unique
We
in
just-
that respect.
Yeah, we just got back from a Mediterranean cruise, and trust me, I'm a Philadelphia boy talking to an Italian asking for a large cappuccino in a to-go cup, and they looked at me like, you see this guy?
Hands are flying,
Yeah.
and they're polite to you. But then the second they kind of go prepare it, it's like, I can still see you, and they're
Right.
Honestly, even working for an Italian cruise line, it took me a long time to not take a lot of Italian tendencies offensively. And then and there's a couple cultures like that, which is why it's so cool to travel. It took me a while to realize, I'm like, oh, that's not offensive the way that I'm taking it.
No, not at all. And Italy was one of my favorite places, and I found the people to be amazing, you know,
Yes.
and they're so expressive and in a good way. Like, really.
Yeah, no, it's so great.
What has inspired you to create She Loves, She Travels, which, by the way, I love the name.
Thank you.
Do you love going by that name, or do you use the SLST abbreviation?
I usually say She Loves, She Travels, but I could use
Okay.
either. I'm hoping that one day what had started that is just because I kind of wanted to share a lot of my stories back home.
Sure. Yeah.
Especially when you're in a cruise ship. Many people don't know this, but a lot of us crew members pay for Wi-Fi, and it is not cheap. So we don't always have the social access, let alone you're working a lot of hours. So sometimes when you have hours off, you don't want to spend the whole entire, you want to catch up with your family, but you don't want to spend the
Yeah.
whole time constantly. So I started just kind of writing about my experiences on board for my family. Then I remembered how much I loved to just write. I really enjoy that. I really enjoy sharing. I feel like maybe I am not the smartest person in the world, but I do have lots to offer in that realm as far as everyone that travels does.
Yeah. Yeah.
I also used to get so frustrated with, I feel like there's such a way to do travel on a budget if you do it the right way.
Right.
I noticed that it looks like all these travel bloggers are like setting sail every weekend, every month they're going. So I'm like, how are they doing this? Do they have a money tree and then they just like shake it? Oh, okay, here we're gonna go travel. Like, and I ran across your blog and I was like, wow, okay, you have some really great travel tips. My favorite is the carry-on vacation. You do not take a suitcase. You put everything you need in a backpack. I was like,
I never take a suitcase.
really?
A, I don't need all that stuff most of the time. B, I'm, especially if I'm
Do
moving.
tell. Give our listeners something
tell.
to go by. Let's hear this.
So I actually, I just bought my Frontier Go Wild Pass. I don't know if you've heard of that yet. But
Tell about that. What is that?
It is an annual pass. You can also get a seasonal pass. I like to fly a lot. I'm about 45 minutes from my airport. I just booked a flight to Denver for $15 one way and $15 back. Now, if you are traveling a lot like me, it's totally worth it. I think I paid like $500 for the year, but now I book on taxes. But that is primarily because it's not going to be worth your money if you're going to carry bags. Because by the time you start tagging on the bags, it's like $50 a bag.
Right.
I have a travel backpack that's not gigantic. It fits in all like the personal items, and then I use it as my personal item. Because personal items with even all your budget airlines are free. I just don't. I bring my laptop. I roll up all my clothes. I feel like it compromises the space. If I have a lot of stuff, I use packing cubes, which is I'm sure like stuff you've heard like on so many travel blogs.
Yeah. Packing cubes are huge.
Yeah, and you just you compress your stuff. You really don't need that much, and then I run. And then I also have
Okay. How many pairs of shoes? I'm a minimalist on shoes, so usually they don't take that much in my bag, but I know a lot of people are not.
Love
so
shoes.
how many
I'm so bad with that
shoes?
because I'm a minimalist. I carry like 2 tops. I bring my chacos with me everywhere I go. I love my chacos. I've climbed the Himalayas in my chacos. I have swam in my chacos. I have everything in my chacos. I travel in them. But sometimes I bring a pair of tennis shoes. So if you're packing, a lot of times, especially when I've had a smaller bag, I'll wear my tennis shoes. I'll wear sweatshirts or scarves or bigger items. And then I strap my chacos to the outside of my bag. Anything like that. But I know that people want dress up shoes. I just don't do that very often.
I don't either.
But most of the time when I'm traveling, I don't have to sit down for like as many fancy things. I might have a nicer dinner, but I usually wear like my Adidas shoes. They're not that nice.
Right. So,
It's like put her in the back.
yeah.
Yeah.
So this travel pass sounds amazing, and that allows you to really travel for cheap.
Oh yeah, it's
especially especially if you can compact everything. And you're right, adding up all the baggages and the fees and stuff like that, it just adds up, and then now you're paying like a full fare that you would on someplace else. So
the only problem, which I will comment on, is I think how they do it. Which, by the way, this Frontier Go Wild Pass has only been here for 2 years now, so it's fairly new. I think what they're doing is like kind of filling up extra seats like they would on a cruise ship. Like last minute cabins fill up, where you can get them really, really cheap if you book last second. But you also could maybe not get the cabin if you book last second.
Right.
So that is the flaw, especially if you have a family or a job that's not as flexible. I'm lucky enough that I could look at my schedule for the week. And then this week, for example, I realized I was off Tuesday, Wednesday. And then I looked, and I didn't just look at, I ended up going to Denver this week, but I looked at like Miami, Orlando, like 20 locations until like so it's kind of a little bit of a game. You have to be willing to, if you're just willing to move, it could work out really well for you. But if you have a family, that may not be towards your benefit if you have to plan things out in advance. But that's what I've been doing lately.
No, that's some great advice there. I mean, I did not know they offered that. I know some other airlines had offered it, like Southwest and stuff like that, but that's just great to know.
Yeah.
What about like when is your you have any cruises planned upcoming?
I don't have a cruise currently planned, and I'm actually so sad about that. I am kind of in this era where I'm visiting my cruise friends in their homes.
Oh, that's cool.
So I'm not necessarily going back to the ships for now, but I like in the fall I'm visiting my friend that I worked with that was from Scotland. And then in January I'm going to visit my friend in Namibia and South Africa. So I don't have a
Wow.
cruise booked. I'm kind of just in an era where I'm kind of meeting up with people in their homes, which was such a benefit of working on the cruise ships. Obviously you meet people from all over the world, but they're so excited to share their part of the world with you.
Yeah, and not only that, you're getting a tour and you're getting that experience from someone who actually lives there. It's
Yeah.
not the commercialized excursion or what they think tourists wants to see. They're taking to you where the locals hang. And that for us is the biggest challenge when we cruise or travel outside of cruising is we don't like the typical tourist traps. It's like, okay, yeah, we've seen them. And this is especially true on the islands. And so you want to tour like a tourist would. Like we love the local bars that the, locals go to and the local eateries. They don't have to be
Yeah.
fancy at all, but the food is going to be authentic.
I feel like it is hard as a passenger to get that experience while still remaining safe. It makes me really sad when I hear
Yes.
that like people like went to all these Caribbean islands and they ended up at a Margaritaville. Not that I don't love
Yes.
a good Margaritaville.
No.
It is. It's safe, but at the same
Yeah.
time,
It's hard. It really is hard because even working on the cruise ships for a long time, it took me a while to figure out my spots. And I have been in a few spots where locals have like told me, be like, hey, you've kind of come too far. And I'm like, heard, repeat, I'll walk back. So that
Wow.
balance of trying to kind of dive into that. And I don't know what advice I can give other than crew members are so great to talk to because they've been to that port so many times. So they can kind of tell you where it's a little bit safer. So I'd always recommend talking with your crew members, but it can be hard. I'm very much curiosity killed the cat. And sometimes I wander where I shouldn't wander.
Oh no, we're the same way. We'll go out and about and try and figure stuff out on our own, and then all of a sudden, we don't want to be a, pure runner. We're running back to the ship, but we definitely take those chances, and with enough balance, that we will be on time getting back. But there's just a lot of things that we like to go see that maybe it's just not offered, so we'll take that chance. But
Right.
now you have to be a little more careful at some places that you go, safety and all that good stuff. How about like some of the challenges working on a cruise ship? What were like some of the challenges or rewards that you found working on a cruise ship for a while?
I was exhausted for 5 years.
Everybody says they're exhausted. You work at just a couple hours, right?
yeah, I don't think people like really realize the amount of, there is no like 5-day work
no
week,
day
weekend
off.
off.
No.
Yeah. So my contract said no more than 11 hours a day. But it grounded out for the week. So there are plenty of days where I worked more, but maybe some days I worked less. It just kind
Right.
of depends on your job title and description. But yeah, you don't get days off. So it's kind of a decision which the longer you work on board, the more time you end up sleeping in your cabin. Because when you first get there, like you work your whole shift. Or for me, it was kind of based on when the guests were on board. Because I
Okay.
didn't have a lot of work other than maybe like inventory, costumes, cleaning when the guests were off board. So a lot of times my day would start at like 6 a.m. when the guests were getting off in a port and I'd help with disembarkation. And then I might have a break in the middle of the day when the guests are off on the island for like 4 hours. But then when they come back, it's afternoon games, afternoon trivias, welcome back aboard parties. And then the evenings are always just wild because there's so much to do.
Yes.
And I think people underestimate how small the teams are. I would work on ships with like 7,000 passengers, and our team of entertainers would be like 13, 14 people.
Wow,
And
that's kinda
we
small.
host and run. It's really like we would go. My schedule would be like evening trivia, Kaitlyn, Michael Jackson trivia, Kaitlyn, flower glory party. These people, and we would run from activity to activity, and we would often change costumes in between activities to match the theme that we were going into. So sometimes your only rest for the day is that period when you're in docked. So at a certain point, you have to decide: is it more important for me to go outside and get sunshine and like play on
Yeah.
the and explore, or is it more important that I sleep?
Yeah. What about on some of your downtime? Do you get like, we've heard, obviously the quarters that you have, there's like, gym, a place to work out. And then there's some bar. Yeah. 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 And we also heard this too, so maybe it's different. So your position on the ship, did it allow you to do certain things that were different from other staff? So could you go eat at at a restaurant or something different, or were you allowed to have a cocktail at the same bar as the guest? How did that work with you?
For sure. So most of our ships, how it worked, which, mind you, when I first started, it was very hierarchy.
Yes.
Like most ships that I worked on, there was a crew mess, a staff mess, and an officer's mess. And you could eat down, but you couldn't eat up. And each of the messes had kind of a little bit better food.
Okay.
And for example, officers can be in guest areas off duty. Some staff members can be in guest areas off duty. It just kind of depended on your rank.
Right.
But in my most recent ships, some of the newer ones that they constructed, it was one big mess. So I feel like they're trying to like work away from that. But for the longest time, I was considered staff, and a kind of a good way of understanding what that means is kind of like the faces. So your dancers in the theater, your entertainers, the hosts, the people that you see the faces of. And my line were like the staff, whereas the crew could be the people in the messes, the bartenders, even though you still see their faces, it was kind of a different tier. And what I noticed too is our cabins were so small, and I always shared with somebody, but I never shared with more than one person. Whereas the crew members I was friends with, they would have like 4 people in a small cabin.
Yeah, that's what we heard. Yeah.
Benefits with ranks. And some of that is it's just unfortunate, but some of it's based on your language skills, the jobs you're in. And I will say hands on hands that every crew member on that ship worked 4 times as hard as us. And we worked hard. But the people that are cleaning the rooms, the bar department, they are just working so hard, and they have far less benefits than we ever did, which is crazy.
So if you start at that level, how easy is it in the cruise ship industry to work your way up? So say you do start in housekeeping, or you start as a bartender, and you say want to be an entertainer. I imagine language skills are going to be huge. Mm-hmm. But how hard is it?
I think that kind of depends on your management. Because I saw some managers really push if people wanted to transfer departments, but sometimes I don't think they wanted to push people into departments and train them in a new job. So I think it just kind of, you could have gotten lucky enough to switch over, or maybe you have history with the company, but I very rarely saw that crossover. I would meet with a lot of the same crew members and staff members, and sometimes you'd see like excursions was considered staff on our ship. Sometimes you'd see an excursion move to entertainment or something like that, but I didn't often see the different levels change. I don't know if that's because they didn't care to. I didn't know if that's because they knew their job, but I don't know. It's so wild because cruise ships are like a gigantic town. So I think it's just hard to cross over between departments.
And I think, too, some people don't want that customer interaction because it's very rewarding, but it can also be very stressful because people come in all types of personalities, all types of culture where perhaps to you they're being offensive, but they're not. It's just part of their culture. Yeah. So sometimes, yes, you may not make as much, but sometimes it's just easier to do this job because you have camaraderie with your crew members and your staff and all that. So we've talked to some crew where they're happy like where they are because they've built up that friendship and they do longer contracts and they're okay with it because of the way their personal lives are lined up as well. Yeah, no, for sure. And I will hands down always say that I believe that I got the best job for me and I love my job. Whereas people will come up to me and be like, I could never do your job. So like, I understand what you're saying of maybe somebody's job that I could never do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's in any industry, I get that all the time, when I work in production and stuff like that. They're like, oh my God, it's like a 3-ring circus. You got this person here. You got to just produce everybody and get them all together and make magic somehow. And they're like, no, I want to be the solo person that you tell me what to do. And that's good enough, So what, as far as any like memorable experiences or things that happen on a ship or that pop into your mind from your experience of cruising?
Yes, I have so many great memories.
I know.
I have so
It's
many
funny when
great
we
memories.
ask that, there's like, we just talked to a guy that he cruised for 23 years as a musical director on one of the ships. And his story's like, where do I start? I have 23 years, What do you want me to tell you? I was like, tell me the dirt. That's what I want to hear.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's like a gossip. It's like high school sometimes on some of the cruise ships. It's just like
Yeah.
gossiping about like who ended up in whose cabin and
Exactly.
like, who's partying with who and who. Yeah. It can be very messy. And I think sometimes that's because that's your home.
Yeah.
It's like living in a small town. Like the people are this close together. Like you can't.
Yeah. But the problem is in a small town, if you oversleep work, you're at your house. On the ship, if you oversleep work, you're considered like a missing person. So
Oh, yeah.
they'll bang on your door, security. Not that that's ever happened to me.
No. But we
What do
heard
they
like,
think happened? Do they think you fell overboard? Like what is their
I
concern?
don't know if that's the concern as much as I feel like there's just so many protocols. So like
Yeah.
even like for drinking, we're allowed to drink, but we can only drink to a certain percentage because at any point there could be an emergency and we have to be capable to.
Correct.
So I think there's
Yeah.
just like a lot of procedures that fall into that. If they're late for work and they're not picking up their cabin phone, then all of a sudden there's procedures that fall into play. Like they could be a missing person. And
Yeah.
you do not want to be woken up by security knocking on your door because you stayed in
Yep.
the crew bar too late the night before.
That is a no-no. Yeah, we heard a story where somebody was out with their friends, actually off the ship. But when they came back, they came back as a group, and one of their friends had way too much and passed the limit, and they got flagged instantly.
They'll say you
And they
home
were,
in a minute.
yeah, that's what they did. So they're not messing around, which we totally get, because if you understand the industry and how that job works, you have to be alert, 24/7. Yeah, you can have your downtime, but you can sleep off, a couple cocktails. But, having 700, that's another story,
Yeah.
So,
It can
and they want to be
definitely
careful about that.
because you can never really completely turn off. At any point, I feel like at any point anybody could have called me at my cabin and been like, "Hey, we need you to fill this position." So it was like always kind of on. You never could like when you're in the States or home or whatever, you can choose to ignore a message if your boss asking you to come early to work.
Right.
You can't do
Yeah.
that on board.
No. No.
I don't know. I want to tell you so many stories. I don't know where to start.
Well, how about let me switch gears. How about destinations? Do you have any favorite places that you went
Palma.
to?
Palma de Mallorca, hands down.
Wow. That was instant.
Yeah, absolutely gorgeous. I would go live there tomorrow. The beaches are amazing. The sangria is amazing.
Yes.
I love Spain. I did a lot of Mediterranean routes. I really loved my Northern Europe route where I got to see like Reykjavik and I got to see like Norway, and that was cool.
Right.
But I would go back to Spain immediately. I don't know. It's just gorgeous. And I feel like the people are very hospitable. Like they're so proud of their country and they want to share that with you. So if I were to book a cruise tomorrow, even though, mind you, the Caribbean is fun and the Caribbean is very affordable, especially if you live on this side of the world.
Yes.
I'm not saying not to go to the Caribbean, but I feel like there's a little bit more personality in some of the European countries just because they've been around longer. Nothing other
Yeah,
than that.
no. Yeah, we just came back, just a few months ago, and my first time. So I was just blown away. I was just like, everybody is just super nice, except for when I got a coffee and they looked at me a little weird. But aside from that, no, everybody was just so nice. You don't see anything like that here in the States. It's completely different. And just the way they treat you and their lifestyle is just, different. And every, place has a different vibe. So, yeah, I get what you mean, and the Caribbean is beautiful too.
Cuba
Yeah.
was really fun because when my ship docked in Cuba, we were there 3 days. So 2
Okay.
overnights. And when you have an overnight, you typically get a lot more free time as an employee because people are out all night long at Cuban clubs and going to like see all the different shows and stuff. So we got a lot of free time when we were 3 days because there's never anybody on board. They are always
Right.
off. So Cuba was fun, but now I don't think Americans can go back into Cuba.
No, I
I
don't
was
think
going to
so. I
say,
think they
like, was
stopped
it a
that.
restricted excursions? Were there restricted parts of the island?
just
Or
got
at that
lucky.
time?
I just got lucky. They sent me like right as the doors had opened, and my contract was I flew into Cozumel. I got on the ship in Cozumel, and the route was Cozumel, Cuba, and Miami. It was like quick little
Okay.
4-day cruises. So I think I literally just got lucky at the timing. They were looking for an entertainer that spoke English because as a first language, which mind you, everyone speaks English. They all speak it well, but
Yes.
it's hard to understand over microphones. And so a lot
Yeah.
of times they would put in English as a first language just because it comes across a little bit more clear on the microphone.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that ship that was doing the Mexican-Cuban route was moving to Miami to pick up American passengers for like the first time. It was like a big deal. And so they
Wow.
wanted somebody on board. So I got really lucky that I was the host that they pulled for that. And then I was on that ship for like 6-7 months. And then I went home. And by the time they tried to do another season, it wasn't allowed. So I just got so lucky to be in that one little period.
Yeah. So you got to see that because now you can't. So, I mean,
Yeah,
you got
no, I
lucky,
can't
you
go
know?
back and forth.
No, you can't unless you want to do one of those excursions where you're on your own and you just take a chance, you know,
Not in
but no,
Cuba.
you can't even, yeah.
Not in Cuba.
Can't do that anymore. Yeah. So what about, I don't know if you keep up with like, you know, we get emails, we get news bulletins and all this stuff about the cruise industry changing and how they're just coming out with these new cruise ships that are just like cities, you know?
They're
Like, what
wild.
do you, yeah. So what do you feel about the changes in the cruise
I
industry?
have mixed feelings.
Okay, let me hear it.
I have really mixed feelings. I think that, and this is just personal, to
Yeah.
each their own, but I feel like my best experience on cruise ships is for the smaller ones, like, which is
Yeah.
wild. I say small as in like 3,000, 4,000 passengers, right?
No, but a lot of
They're
people
still
like that.
big.
Yeah,
No,
no.
we've heard that from a lot of people that they prefer the smaller, more intimate. They feel they get
Yeah.
better service.
I feel like the ships keep getting bigger,
Yeah.
but the staff keeps getting smaller. And even though it's like lots of glitz and glam and it's pretty, I just feel like the coolest thing about a cruise, my smallest cruise ship I think I worked on was like 2,500 passengers. I knew all my passengers like names by the end of the week.
That's
We
amazing.
had like great connections. I recognized them. I saw them when they were getting off the ship, when they were coming back on. They'd be like, "Woo, Kaitlyn," or whatever name
Yeah.
they thought was my name. Woo.
Right.
I felt like I kind of had that like relationship, and then you'd see them like 3 months later. Like you'd still be on the same contract because passengers often repeat, and if
Yes.
they enjoy the ship, they'd be back. So I got to see people like multiple times, whereas I would be on the biggest ship I work on. I think had like 6,000, 7,000
Right.
passengers, and they'd be like the last day, and I'd still be meeting people. Like I would have an interaction with somebody, and I would never get to have another interaction with that person, and it just felt like more distant. Like whereas on smaller ships, it's like we were all kind of a family together. Like we were there, we were hosting the activities, but we were all kind of together. On the big ships, it kind of felt like a veil was between the passengers and the crew.
Yeah, because it's so big, and it was like the ship, like the icon of the seas, you know, the new Royal Korean. It's crazy how big those are. But also another thing with the small ships, and you know, we haven't had the experience behind this, but we've been told that a lot of the itineraries you can get to more places with the smaller ships that like the bigger ships just can't go. So
Yeah.
that's another benefit about taking some of the smaller ships. But I do believe that the service too, like you said, being a cruiser and you being staff is just you have more of that one-on-one constantly,
Yeah.
you know, and that's nice to have.
We used to do this thing, and a lot of MSC ships have done it, and it's like the final chow chow. So
Yeah.
we would come out as entertainers, and it'd be to like Michael Jackson's "We Are the World," and it'd be black on stage, but we had letters across all of our chests, and we would say thank you, and then we'd flip the
that's-
letters, and then they would glow. So you couldn't see any of our faces; you just saw the
Sure.
words changing. And then it would say gracias, and then say grazie, and then it would say donge, depending on the nationalities on board. We would try to say thank you in many languages, and it was like the most beautiful, like little wholesome little thing, because people would be so ecstatic when they saw their language. Like they felt seen when we were saying thank you to, and they would like cheer. And usually the Brazilians were always the loudest. always the Brazilians would be like yelling, and it was like the nicest little thing. And I had done that on many MSC ships, and then they announce us, and they're like, "Thank you to our cruise staff team," and like it was like the most rewarding feeling. Like you would have the hardest week, and then you'd have that moment where people were cheering and they want to take photos with you, and you're like, "Okay, I might have had a hard week, I might have been miserable half my week, but like I made their week," and it was like that little come around moment. And when you got to the bigger ships and you would have that, nobody would like, because all these people that they were there for the show and they still appreciated the gesture, but you didn't have any of that interaction that you did on the small ships. You lose all of that. It's just a show.
I love that. I love more of like, the one-on-one, just get to know the people. And I just feel it's more of an intimate kind of service, It's definitely, I know those big ships, and they're just producing those ships too. In fact, I think MSC just came out with a new ship they just introduced. I don't know how many people it holds, but it looks wild. And just the technology, just everybody's outdoing each other, from the entertainment to the technology to
they're gorgeous
experience.
Ships. I don't know if you guys have ever been on an MSC cruise ship, but they are
No, we have not.
gorgeous. The most beautiful ships I've seen. And they keep getting bigger and bigger. And I want to be supportive. I do. I just feel like sometimes you got to work on the little things to make the big things worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. So for people that are going to tune in and watch this series that we have, you being staff and seeing a ton of, cruisers come aboard, what do you think some of the common mistakes of first-time cruisers you see from a view of your own do or don't know that maybe somebody watching this can take away and go, oh, okay, I know not to do that, or I know to do that. And it could be anything from, what to pack, how many things to pack, or don't do X, Y, and Z. Yeah.
Fall asleep on the sun. And then they're blistered for the rest of their cruise.
Yeah, sunscreen.
Sunscreen.
Yeah.
I also feel like people, rightfully so, are kind of bashful coming on board because it's new. But I would always recommend right away coming to like whatever welcoming parties, coming to whatever like opening shows, all that stuff, because it really just opens the communication for everything for the rest of the week.
Yeah.
Your program is so important. I don't know, that sounds cheesy and it sounds like I'm just saying what they're telling me to say, but the program has so many things on it that you're going to look back on your cruise and you're like, oh my gosh, how did I miss that 70s, 80s party? But it was like, so paying attention to the program, I think, is really big. And then I think people overpack. That's just coming from me, my 2 pairs of shoes.
Yeah, no. It's true. Actually, we'll admit we were overpackers when we first took our first cruise. And now we're just like, nope, not doing it. We carry small bags in and out. We learned, I think maybe my 3rd bag rolled down the runway boarding the ship and I couldn't catch it, because we had too many bags. But just little things like that, we learned as well. And it's just like, I know we get a lot of questions too, what should we pack? Should we buy stuff at the store? And I'm like, no. Try and buy everything on land so you're not spending so much money.
I know that a lot of people, especially if you're flying in, they're like, well, buy shampoo or conditioner. You don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be like 3 times the price for a bottle of shampoo in the Cayman Islands.
Yeah.
So you definitely want to come with either your little tiny ones. I do know that for my girls out there, the water is harsh on the ships. So if you're worried about your hair, I would always recommend bringing good shampoo. Try not to wash your hair a lot when you're on the cruise ships. It is not in any of the ships I worked on. I mean, you're going to get clean, but it's going to damage your hair over time. So I'd bring good quality products.
Have you seen when you were working on the cruise, did you see a lot more singles? Because I noticed just as of in the last few years, so many more advertisements for single cruises, or the fact that now they're developing these beautiful single rooms and advertising. You would think it's just a room, but it's not. They have their own dedicated space. I don't know whether MSC offers that kind of stuff.
We used to have single parties.
Okay.
They would always send me to like host them because I was
wow.
on the team. Whatever. But I feel like I didn't see that very often when I was on board, though.
Okay.
Like, I feel like a lot of times people would come as families and then like people would break off from their families. But I think they're trying to push that more. I think it's a great vacation to take as a single. It's very easy to get involved in activities and games. It's
right.
if you struggle to open up that conversation and make a friend, with an entertainer, and then 2 seconds in they're going to be with a whole group of people, like that's our job, is to make sure that you are comfortable and that you're enjoying your time. So, but yeah, no, I actually didn't see a lot of that.
I would think, like, also too, as you know, we find out that more of the cruise lines that are advertising that are really trying to advertise towards that, you know, so maybe
Like
MSC is
starting to
not
grow
a line. Yeah, maybe they're advertising more towards families and that kind of thing, where the typical one that comes to mind now is Virgin, you know, how they're just pushing, let's just go party, and we don't want any kids on board, you know?
Yeah, I've heard lots of stories from Virgin Cruises.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure you
The
could write a
Red
book.
Lady, I've seen the Red Lady docked a few times, and all the
Yes.
about the Red Lady, but
And I forget, where are you based out of again?
Indiana, so nowhere close to
Indiana.
water. When I
Right,
went and
right.
got my certifications, because all crew members have to be STCW certified, which
Right.
is
And how was that training?
oh, so much fun. So
Yeah,
much
okay.
fun. For me, I was landlocked in Indiana, so I had to fly to Miami. And then I took like a course, and it was like firefighting one day. It was like lifeguarding, basic survival skills, first aid. So it was like I was in class from 8 to 5. But for me, which an expensive class, mind you, I think it was like $1,000. But I was in class from 8 to 5, and then I'd go out with everybody from my class, and we'd like run around at night and then be back in class at like 8 a.m. And that was cool because it wasn't just cruise ship employees. It was
Right.
like bodies and people that owned like surf shops, and like, so it was kind of cool to
How
like,
cool. What a great mix. And yeah, we heard it's like a boot camp, like a quick boot camp on learning everything. And it's no joke either.
it's no joke. And then when you get on board, it never stops. It is
It never
relentless.
stops.
It is relentless. We have crew drills every single week, and they are like different kinds. It can be anything from like crowd management drills to fire drills to like man overboard drills, and some of them are scheduled, some of them are not. You go to trainings throughout your whole contract and consistently stay in trainings. And when I went on board, we had to pass this test, and I think we had like 3 times to pass it, and if we didn't pass it, they'd send you home.
Right.
So they're very, which is a good thing. You want to make sure your crew
Yeah,
is.
I mean, actually, anybody listening to that, you can feel safe because people get trained, you know?
Yeah,
But
it
no,
never
I mean,
stops.
we heard it's brutal. And it's like, and exactly like you said, so when you first get your certification, then you get on the cruise ship, it's just nonstop. They just keep at you. And I think, you know, that is something
those
to
are,
be
like,
said for the
you can't
cruise
miss.
lines.
You can't miss. You can't be late. That's like an instant. There's like an operation of safety, and if you miss something with safety, it's like an automatic. Like on my ships, which I can't speak for other cruise lines, but we had 3 like warnings, 3 points, whatever you want to call them. And first was kind of a verbal, second was a written, third you're going home. And if you get fired from a cruise ship, a lot of people don't know this, but they just drop you off.
Right.
You have to figure out your flight home. So if I was in Miami, no big deal. Maybe that's a $200 flight back to Indiana. But my friends that were in Miami that had to pay for a $2,000 flight back to South Africa. I had a friend once that was in Cuba, when we were in Cuba, lost their passport, and then came back on
In
board.
Cuba?
Yeah, in Cuba. Because when we were in Cuba,
Not
that was the
good.
only port that we ever had to take our passport out with us. Lost their passport, and they got sent home immediately. And it took them like so much time and so much money to get out of Cuba without a passport.
Oh, jeez.
Oh
Yeah.
my God, that's a nightmare. I mean,
Yeah.
even well, I was joking earlier about the pier runners, but you know, we hear that the cruise ships, you know, they'll find their passports and leave them at the dock and all that, but they leave, and those people spend thousands to get home because they're not
You know
working the
what?
cruise.
That's a great tip for first-time cruisers. Don't be late. Get a watch.
Don't be late.
Get something. The ship will leave you.
No, they leave you, and they're not paying for you either to get
So
home.
what happens is a lot of times either A, there's another ship that's coming in behind you, or B, there's a certain time that you need to be in the next dock. And
Okay.
cruise ships get fined thousands of dollars if they're like minutes late. So it is very like, and in your, when you sign up for a cruise, you agree to all that. You agree that you'll be there on time. And we quite often, more often than I'd like to admit, see people running down the dock trying to catch the ship.
Pier runners, right? Is that what they call us? I think. I don't know.
I mean,
What do you guys call them? Maybe you have a different name.
we just laugh.
Yeah, we call them the laughing people.
Because it's preventable. It's not something that's like,
always
of course, there are moments where maybe they took a non-ship excursion and the bus broke down. And depending on where you're traveling, there's not a lot of resources to get another bus out to you. And so they've missed the bus. And that's where, like, once we get to know a location well, we'll do our stuff on our own. But oftentimes when it's the first time we're visiting a place and there's a language barrier as well, and I know we've got phones and all now, but which has made things like super easy, we'll tend to go through the ship. And the prices, I have found, the cruise ship price, it's beginning to, you can still get a good deal.
If there's a crew member running past you, then you better catch up.
Yeah. Well, it's tough. I always said it's tough to catch up when you have 7 margaritas, you're laying in the water and you're looking at the cruise ship and it's leaving, you know?
Oh, man.
You're done, you know?
A lot of people fly to the next port, which I'm sure is just so much money.
Yeah, it's, either way, it's avoidable. You just got to watch your time. We say that all the time, when we've seen pier runners, or that's what I call them, but we've seen people running and they miss the ship. And, I just think it's avoidable. I just think people, lose track of the time,
Yeah, which I understand. You're having a good time, but the best thing about a cruise ship is it doesn't have to stop. You don't have to stop being outside in the sun. You can just
go
to the
cruise
next
ship's a party. Yeah. Exactly. So, traveling so much, have you found any secrets to getting discounts? Now, we talked about the airline trick. Is there any tricks that you have for first-time cruisers or even cruisers nowadays, or any sites or anything that you might use? We always go back and forth of talking to different people where they use a travel agent versus booking directly with the cruise line. Do you have any favorites?
There's so many different opinions on that.
I would love to hear yours.
With travel agents, and that sounds really bad. I have tons of great friends that are travel agents.
Yeah.
I don't like to book with any third party. I feel like most of the time you can get just as good, if not better, of a price. And if there's an issue, it will be taken care of.
Instantly.
Whereas if the travel party may have overbooked your hotel and you didn't book through them directly, you could just be out of the room. Same with cruise ships. But I understand, like you said, like if it's your first time in the port, like there's understanding of like, it's nice knowing everything's taken care of. And I understand that as well, but I never book through anything third party. It's just a game for me. It's a game of going online and like looking at all the different, for cruising I have a harder time giving you advice on cruising because even though I worked on it for a long time, I never booked my own cruise. I booked one. So it's
I wasn't sure. Like whether you, even like in general, it's not just cruising anymore. Like some of these sites, like the Google sites, they do cruises, they do airlines, they do hotels, they do everything, Airbnbs, and it's all packed into one site. Or, and like you said, we just spoke to a couple, said, nope, we're booking directly through the cruise line because if something goes wrong, instantly they're taking care of us. There's no, I have to go call my travel agent. Oh, he's off this weekend. It's this and that. Or if there's an emergency, I got sick and I need a refund, you instantly. So we hear all kinds of different stories. I just didn't know if you had a favorite. The airline trick, that's a good one, though. I
would say also, if you're not on Google Flights, you need to be on Google Flights. It's free. You can just like put a destination of where you want to travel. So Scotland, for example, I'm going soon. I don't know, September, October. This is how much planning I put into things.
That's good. That's awesome. And not only that, that makes for a less stressful trip. You just go, oh, I'm leaving tomorrow. Let's go. Pack that little bag, the 2 pairs of shoes, you're gone.
Yeah. Oh, that's another great tip that I like to do. I have like a Vera Bradley roll up, like over the door hanger. I keep that packed. I have a travel size shampoo, conditioner, deodorant, a little baby dry shampoo, bobby pins, hair ties, anything that I need for every single trip is in that bag. When I come home, I throw it back on the door. And whenever I go for my next trip, it has like a toothbrush that's not my toothbrush at home. Travel, toothpaste. So I just have to think about my shoes and my clothes, and then everything else toiletries wise isn't just like a constant hassle. It's already ready. And then when I get back from a trip, if I ran out of something, I restock it. 10 out of 10 recommend doing that. You could even have a small little like Foley bag, whatever it is. don't mix it with your main stuff. Just have it as your travel ready to go bag, and it'll take so much stress away because you don't get there and you're like, oh my gosh, I forgot my toothbrush. It's already.
Oh my
in
God,
there.
and that, there's so many essentials now. They're so easy to get. Amazon, TikTok Shop, just a bunch of anywhere, even your local, pharmacy. There's so many places to get that kind of stuff. We'll talk about the magnetic wall hooks and stuff like that. They're convenient, just different things like that.
And then I throw it in my carry-on, and then because so many times I get ready in the airport, and I pull it out, and I have everything I need for the airport. I can wash my face, brush my teeth in the airport. Yeah, I would 1,000% recommend that. I have a full list on my blog.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So speaking of that, so where can people find you? I'd love for you to tell everybody where your socials and where your blog. Just tell us where you're located.
She Loves, She Travels. That is my being right now. You can find me on shelovesshetravels.com. That is my blog. So I write all kinds of budget pieces. I've been in Indiana for a while, so I've been writing a lot about stuff in Indiana, I found.
Check it out, everybody. It's amazing. I've read a lot of the pieces.
I love it. I've loved falling in love with writing again through this.
That's amazing.
I'm She Loves, She Travels on everything. So you can find me on Instagram. My TikTok is my baby. I love TikTok. I started blowing up on TikTok when I started doing Days in the Life at Sea. So I kind of tried to share like the different costumes I'd wear, the different stuff.
That's great. I'll
be on all that stuff as well. I'm sure I have plenty of more tips that I can't think of in this moment because.
No, well, they're going to have to come. They're going to come to your website.
Yeah, they're going to see everything on your website. But in the future, is there one destination or a port that you have not been to yet? Like, what is the bucket list? Like, I got to go here next.
Specifically a port or like a country?
A country, a destination.
I would say.
Drum roll. Here we go.
Drum roll. Oh gosh, there's so much. Brazil. I want to go to Brazil so bad.
There you go.
I've never
you speak
been.
Portuguese, right?
No falo Portuguese.
Enough to get by.
Yeah, see, you'll get by just fine.
Beijo. That's what my colleagues would always say. But I can get by in it because something that the ship's taught me that's so wonderful is that you can communicate with any language just by like your actions, you being. I would have full contracts or full cruises where like I would have this passenger that we'd be so close, we didn't understand a word we said. So I think like my advice to like people that are nervous, because I know a lot of people are nervous, those language barriers can be very nerve-wracking, but to know that you can communicate through dancing, through smiling, through expression, and that translates across all languages is really cool. That like
it really does.
So I know it's nerve-wracking, and it's outside of comfort zone, of course, but it's also outside of comfort zone for others too.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool to be that. It was really cool when I started learning languages, when I started learning that I could speak a little bit better Spanish than they could speak English to me, and that they would like instantly like, it was so cool to see them, I don't know, to meet them on their plane.
No, there's nothing like that. Yeah. And it just breaks the ice, when you're speaking to them. So I love that too. Well, Kaitlyn, you're lovely. You're awesome. This has been great. So I hope you enjoyed it.
I could talk about this forever.
Yeah, I know. And we're super excited to put this out. And Rachel, anything to add?
I'm loving all of her responses. Brazil, that's a really great one. But yeah, I'm going to like catch up on your blog, especially all of the minimalist packing, because I am a self-proclaimed minimalist packer. So I want to like try and like, it's almost like competitive for me. Every trip, I'm like, what can I take out? What can I, and I'm getting like smaller and smaller. I'm getting good.
Yeah, it does take practice. I will say that it does take practice.
I'm going to go practice because I'm not good. I'm going to admit you both have big Pete. I'm the worst. Anyway, this has been so much fun. Hang out for a second, and we're super excited to have you on today, and it's been great.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode. That was a great episode. We hope you enjoyed it. Great guests. We're super excited. Each week, we're going to bring you a new interview with cruise staff featuring entertainers, cruise chefs, cruise directors, bartenders, whoever we can find, as well as cruisers themselves to tell their individual stories. And we're going to have special guest celebrities. Theme cruises are super big, so we're going to be interviewing a bunch of people. But Rachel, tell them what they need to do to be notified each week.
What do you mean do? They should have did. So if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button. That way you don't miss any future episodes. And if you want to watch some of the previous episodes, the best place to do that is our website. And that is cruiseshipexplorers.com.
Okay, everybody, you heard it, cruiseshipexplorers.com. Join us each week. We're super excited. Till the next time, see you then.